And speaking of giving it a shot, did you hear some of what went on at Al Sharpton's National Action Network meeting last week? I mean, he had all the Democrat presidential candidates in to speak. And, of course, one of our personal favorites, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was there, sharing some nuggets of wisdom, which she always shares. And we wanted to start out because, a lot of what she does, if you watch her repeatedly, is she's a very motivational person. She's really there to motivate people to understand that if she could do this, whatever it is she's doing, then anybody could do it. And frankly, I have to agree, pretty much anybody could do what she's doing. But let's hear from her. And what I think is particularly funny about some of these clips is you'll notice how the audience kind of misses the applause lines. They're obviously not tracking, or maybe they're not believing some of the things that she's saying, which she thinks are going to be applause lines.
I, in fact, am encouraged when people remind the country of my past, not because of anything about my story, but because it communicates that if I could work in a restaurant and become a member of the United States Congress, so can you. So can you.
Wow. You hear that overwhelming applause from the audience there? I bet they really believe that they, too, could become a member of Congress just like she did, just because she said so, right? Or maybe they know the truth. Maybe they know the truth is the only reason she became a member of Congress is because somebody with a lot of money wanted to put her there. But we really have to appreciate when she gets philosophical, because I think that's really when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is at her best. And she did not disappoint.
Philosophical and economical.
Oh, yeah. When she gets economical is even better, right? Because that's when we start talking tippy tops, right? But right now, let's talk about her philosophy, because she's going to explain to you about radicalism and what it means philosophically.
What we need to do in radically deep problems is propose radically visionary solutions. Because radical doesn't mean crazy. Radical means addressing the root, addressing the rot. And that is why we have proposed a Green New Deal for the future of America.
You got to love it, when she gets into playing around with the words. It's addressing the root, addressing the rot. I mean, you just got to love this kind of thought process. And one of the things I love is that she then follows on and she explains to us the Green New Deal. And folks, you're not going to believe some of the things that the Green New Deal includes. I mean, it is like a laundry list of a wish list. It's a wish list of progressive, if you want to call them progressive, causes and other things. It's not just about a Green New Deal for America. It's about a total remaking of America. And because you hear that music
economically,
there...
Yes.
Economically, exactly. And that's what we're going to talk about is the economic justice aspect of what she said. And she gets into a lot of detail on what she thinks about that. And folks, part of what we're trying to do here is teach you what it means to be a radical. And she's going to explain that even further in the next segment as we take you through some of what she says the Green New Deal means, what she says about historically disenfranchised groups, and other things that she thinks are wrong with the United States of America.
You going to do more on the crazy train?
Is that all aboard the train to Hawaii?
Yeah, right.
All aboard that crazy train.
That is one long train trip to Hawaii.
we were talking to Ocasio-Cortez and hearing some of her latest statements and philosophical thoughts and ponderings. And you have to always remember when you're listening to these is that she does believe she is your boss when it comes to climate change.
That's right. And if she doesn't do it, nobody else will, obviously, she thinks. But let's hear her explain what it is that she's talking about doing, the Green New Deal, right? Now, it's funny because she doesn't even seem to know whether it's legislation or resolution or what exactly it is, but she certainly knows that it includes all kinds of things like single-payer health care, tuition-free college, the end of mass incarceration, the end of the war on drugs, examining and pursuing a policy of reparations, and fixing the opioid crisis. I mean, what does the Green New Deal not include, folks?
Within that legislation, and rather within that resolution, we do not shy away from bold conversations of healthcare, housing, and education as human rights, of living wages and dignified work, of policy that isn't just drafted with the next election in mind, but also with the next generation in mind. That is the moral, political, and economic underpinning of making bold investments and dignified jobs, because that is the necessary plan to fix the pipes in Flint and clean the air in the South Bronx, and to create unionized energy jobs for transitioning workers in Appalachia and West Virginia, for single-payer health care and Medicare for all, and tuition-free public colleges and universities to prepare our nation for the future, and for the end to mass incarceration, the war on drugs, examining and pursuing an agenda of reparations, and fixing the opioid crisis too.
What does it not include? What does it not include? It includes everything. Folks, if you were having any trouble following that, I think she's got a little bit to clarify here for you. And I say that slightly tongue-in-cheek, because I want you to hear what she says about the historically disenfranchised and what this might actually do and what we're fighting against.
So what we are fighting for are the policies that are concentrated in working people and communities of color and the historically disenfranchised, to make that more possible in America, to make us be a nation that keeps its promise and lives up to the words in our founding charter. So I want to thank you all again for joining us here today. And I think it's a very important morning, because with our work, and if we organize, and if we fight like we've never fought before, then it is entirely possible that we just listened to someone who will be the next president of the United States this morning.
Woohoo. I mean, it is entirely possible that we just listen to somebody. Now, I think you got to listen to the whole thing, folks. You got to go out there and listen to Ocasio-Cortez, because she really goes on a couple of tangents. One of them she goes on is about Dr. Martin Luther King, and I think this really identifies for you where she's really coming from, because what she says in this clip essentially is that racial injustice is actually the root cause of economic inequality in our country. Folks, this is identity politics, and this is not going to lead us to anywhere good. Listen to what she has to say about this.
His To the Mountaintop speech the night before his passing was around laborers and unionized workers. He was imagining an America beyond Vietnam. He was speaking to the ideals that all labor has dignity, all while educating our country about our own history, and that the forces of bigotry and racism are not separate or particularly different from the fight for economic dignity. They are inextricable from it. Not only because racial injustice exacts itself economically, as we saw in 2008 when Black Americans faced a disproportionate burden of subprime loans. We don't just see it exact environmentally, as we saw with children drinking poisoned water in Flint, or in my own backyard, children breathing dirty air in the South Bronx. But also, bigotry, sexism, xenophobia are the easiest ways to avoid and divide substantive conversations of classism. Injustice of any kind is a loose thread on the fabric of society just waiting to catch. And it will catch if we do not address racism, if we do not address the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap, if we do not address mass incarceration, if we do not address the disproportion of mental health care within our communities, if we do not address the injustices of our immigration system, if we do not address the injustices of education inequity, these are all loose threads just waiting to catch on society.
Anybody else having trouble following these word salads that she's throwing together for us?
It's everywhere.
I mean, she's basically just a communist radical, if you want to break it down, and it's all about economic inequality. Folks, that's communism. That's socialism. That's not this country. And just to remind you, in case you forgot,
Radical doesn't mean crazy.
why would one ever think that? Why would we ever think that radical meant crazy, particularly after listening to a very, very obviously not crazy Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I almost said Ocasio.
I think she really believes this, though.
Well, I think she believes it to the extent that she might believe, fairy tales and other things. I mean, she believes it, but has she really thought it through?
No, of course.
I think she believes that she sounds fantastic verbalizing all of this.
Oh, and I love her cadence, too, as she's trying to build up that cadence of the resistance. Anyway.
Who is she talking to, though? That's
she was talking
scary.
to.
No, I know she's talking to get all of this ammunition going.
Well, that's Reverend Al Sharpton's group, the National Action Network. I mean, she's talking to. They're trying to elevate Al Sharpton. All of a sudden, he's now become some kind of civil rights icon. I mean, I'm sorry, but those of us that remember back to the 90s know who Al Sharpton is, but the media is assisting him in remaking himself. And another thing that happened at this National Action Network meeting last week that I think you got to know about is they stood up all of the Democrat presidential candidates and essentially made them buy into the idea of financial reparations for slavery. And that includes Kamala Harris, and I'm going to run through these in the order that you will hear them in the next audio clip, just so you know who they are. The first person who buys into it, Kamala Harris. And then you've got Robert Francis O'Rourke, known to some as Beto. Then you've got Bernie Sanders. Then New York's Kristen Gillibrand. Then you got Pocahontas Warren. And finally, you finish up with Julian Castro. All of them say that they're in favor of reparations for slavery.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has proposed a bill to form a commission to study how to do reparations.
When I am elected president, I will sign it.
Would you sign that bill?
Yes.
That's all.
Yes, would you sign it?
The House and Senate passed that bill, of course I would sign it.
I firmly support Congresswoman Jackson Lee's bill to create a commission to study reparations.
Gillibrand.
Would you sign the bill for reparations?
Yes, I would. I already support that bill.
Pocahontas.
There are things that we need to do in this country that have been a long time in coming. One of those is to move forward with reparations.
Think about that. This is divide and conquer politics, folks. I mean, none of us in this country ever owned a slave, and none of us ever were slaves. Now, some of us came from families that did own slaves, and some of us came from families that were enslaved, but not all of us. Not all of us were equal participants in something that happened 100 plus years ago. But what they're talking about is making all of us equal participants in paying to somebody else for that. And I just don't understand, why are we going backwards? Why are we moving back into racial identity politics and divide and conquer in this country? I thought this country was supposed to be a melting pot and we would get past all of that. But it seems like the Democrats are hell-bent on taking us back to that language of struggle, that language of resistance, and the disputes between people based on skin color. I think they intend to take us right back there. And you heard that from some of what was going on last week in the National Action Network. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.